Hey everyone, welcome to the Human Cloud Podcast, the spot where leaders come to move the future of work forward. Hey, so on Monday was a very, very special day here in the US. To all of our veterans, thank you so much. Now, today's guest in the theme of Veterans Day is Kris Saling. Kris is the Chief Data and Analytics Officer at the Army's Talent Innovation. Now, we're going to talk about how the U.S. Army and the Department of Defense thinks on recruiting. We're going to talk about what's broken for them. We're going to talk about solutions, and we're really going to hit on how they view technology when it comes to arguably one of the hardest businesses in the world, which is the Department of Defense. Now, my quick message to all of you is if you think your business is hard, if you think that getting freelancers or flexible talent is difficult because of your business's unique requirements, well, Kris has news for you, and I have news for you. It's probably nothing compared to the Army, the Navy, the military, the DoD, you name it. And the U.S. Army and the U.S. DoD, they're building a freelance platform called Gig Eagle. And there's numerous advantages that we're going to talk about in this episode. But deeper than any number, you just got to understand how cool it is to see governments and things like the US DoD really start to embrace this. And the reason I say that is because as a tech entrepreneur, it can be so easy to just focus on one benefit, when in reality, what's needed to really drive true transformation is a societal, an economic, and a technology change. And if you look at the fact that it's not just companies, but it's governments, it's departments of defense, if they're embracing this as well, then freelance is not just a cute little incremental HR change, it's a societal, economic, and technology transformation. So now I've said a lot of abstract buzzwords, but let me introduce you to Kris. All right, Kris, welcome. I'm going to make you blush, hopefully. So I literally just want you to show off for 40 minutes. You know, that is, if you don't blush, I will consider this a failure. But we had the good fortune to meet, what was it, 2 months ago now?
Oh, geez, yeah, it was.
2.5? Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good tacos. But so when you tell me what you're doing, my brain just explodes and go, okay, I'm so proud. Let me frame it up by saying, 6 months ago, I was so mad because I was in Saudi Arabia and there was 2 government-funded freelance marketplaces. And I felt like my own country would rather throw up legislation against freelancers than make it easy to use this future of work model. So with that, I met you and went, okay, sweet. Let me get my American flag back out because I'm so proud of what you and your organization are doing. And so with that, let me hand it over to you, Kris. Do you want to give a brief intro on yourself?
Sure. Let me try and get to the brief version of that because it's an interesting story, at least to me. But kind of a long and convoluted one. I think we all have those.
Hey, we got 45 minutes, Kris. So this is the beauty of the podcast. People listening right now, they're like in a workout, or on a commute, so they got plenty of time.
It's the way we read. It's the way we read and consume information in the future. I love podcasts. But no, back to the kind of how I ended up in this weird convoluted role of being the director of innovation for U.S. Army Recruiting Command. That's a role I think a lot of people would look at that and go, oh my God, you're going to try to do, not just change and modernization, but transformational change in Army recruiting. And we all know how many issues there have been with military recruiting over the last couple of years. But
actually, Kris, we don't. So can you,
okay.
let's exactly, this is where I'm so pumped. So let me give you the outside view would go, okay, we're dealing with DoD, Army, US government, all the resources in the world, everything must be perfect. So let's start from square one.
So, looking at the last couple of years, we have not only missed recruiting numbers in the DoD, but we've missed them by orders of thousands. I mean, in the Army, typically, just to give you an idea of our size, we typically recruit between 55,000 and 65,000 new soldiers a year. It's a little bit more when you consider the Guard and Reserve soldiers we recruit, but we missed that number last year by 15,000, which is significant. That is something for us because despite what we've been doing with new authorities we've been given by Congress, we're still very much a single entry point organization, which is one of the things I think we're going to talk about changing. But because we're a single entry point organization, that's going to have ripple effects for years. We're just going to have this kind of bubble of a lack of personnel through the organization. So that's significant for us. We've had to take a look at how we do business, how our operating model works. And unfortunately, we're kind of sitting there looking at that going, man, we're kind of hanging out in vintage 1995. We've got some things we need to update. We've got a lot of people with a lot of really good ideas, but we've got some work to do.
And so that's fascinating. So 55,000 is the goal, missed by 15. Now I'm going to sound so stupid, okay? And it's like kind of intentional, but also I am that dumb. And so, okay, I hear U.S. Army. I'm assuming, all right, that must mean that there's someone that's going to grab a backpack, start walking, get trained up, and be on the front lines. What are we talking about when we say this 55,000? Are we talking about all just frontline fighters? Are we talking about data scientists, developers, engineers? What's the composition look like?
So yeah, that is a great question because we have 196 different specialties. A lot of times you won't hear about that because you'll hear, people go to career fairs or job fairs and they'll talk about, the teacher, the police officer, the, whatever type of professional, the soldier, and then go to the next one. It's like pretty much everything you could listen to that jobs fair, we have a category for it. So we have pilots, we have data scientists, we have cyber folks, we have engineers, we have the folks who are out on the front lines, driving tanks, running around with their backpacks on, doing logistics operations and everything else. So we have a combination of all of those. The blend of what types kind of depends on year to year. There are also things that we do to help people move around within the service. So some of the functionals we have, they don't necessarily come in there. They get recruited from other, we call them feeder branches. But yeah, it's a little bit of everybody who comes in every year. We flex towards combat arms some years. We flex toward digital support other years. But you got a little bit of everybody here.
That is so freaking cool. So now let's hit on the why. And then, by the way, I think after this is going to be like your journey, right? So like your title is so cool and how did we get there? But so before that, right? So, all right, 196 different specialties, 55,000 new a year is the target. Now, why? Because back to what I was talking about. So I would have loved to serve, right? I feel very insecure that I have not. I feel like a total loser that's just mooching from the country. No. But so it's kind of true. It's kind of true. Yes, I pay lots of, but whatever. So I, though, jumped to San Francisco where it was the heart of no one really needed to recruit, right? It's everyone wanted to be there. And then I went to Microsoft, same thing. Everyone wanted to be there. So they really didn't have that much of a talent shortage. But now for your case, why fall 15 short? Is it because you make it too hard to enter? Because you can't find the people? Like, what are some of the common reasons that we were 15 short?
So that is a hugely complicated question. But some of the immediate ones are, we just haven't updated our ways of communicating to where people are, where they're talking. I mean, a lot of it is us being able to understand the needs of the populations that we're trying to recruit. Everybody is looking, and this isn't just generational. I mean, everybody wants to talk about what Gen Z and Gen Alpha are doing, but I think all of us evolve to a certain degree as new technology and new experiences become more of the norm. People want a greater degree of transparency and authenticity in everything that they do. I mean, look at the advent of Carvana. Everybody wants to order a car without talking to a salesperson. They can pick out what they want. They can do their own research. They can figure out. I mean, we've got the internet at our fingertips. We can figure out a lot about what we want without talking to somebody else who, again, kind of bringing that transparency angle, may or may not have our best interests at heart. So when you come into kind of a closed system where you get all your information from one person, where it's really hard to figure out where your packet is in the process, do you really see everything that's available to you? I mean, a lot of times we have really good recruiters who will walk people through exactly they'll show them their screen, they'll get to see everything that's available, they'll tell them exactly where it is, but it's not self-service. So there ends up with an element of distrust there. So that's kind of one piece of it. The other is, we've kind of taken a beating in the public opinion right now. I mean, looking at trust indices in the American military, we used to be one of the most trusted institutions in America. Again, kind of looking at where we're talking and where our critics are talking. Our critics are talking in areas where people are listening, and anything good that we do is not sufficient enough in the other spaces to counteract a lot of the things that are being saying. And a lot of it is rightful criticism that are being said in those spaces.
That is so now, okay. Let me drill into the trust part, because the part you mentioned about adapting to digital channels and digital experience, totally heard. And that is like a 5-hour webinar, right? And so this trust piece though, what's so interesting to me about it is it's kind of no different than most companies, right? The trust has been shattered, especially in corporate America, where it's cute when companies say we're a family. No, we're not. And it's okay to say no, we're not.
Have a layoff of 15,000.
Yeah, right. Like, no, we're not, and that's fine, right? Like that's totally fine. So trust with both your case and most companies is totally shattered. Now, where do we go from here? And what I mean by that is, I mean, when you're thinking about your top 5 priorities to not miss 15 next year, I mean, where's your head going? Are you just saying, let's spend a bunch of money to hire more recruiters? Let's build a massive digital infrastructure. Like, what is going on in your brain in terms of like your top priorities?
So this is one of the reasons I end up in innovation and not in continuous process improvement. Because my first question is going to be, well, why do we need 55,000? What is our departure rate? We have a lot of authorities for direct accessions, which means we can pull people in at mid-career level. And we have other things that we can do with our strategic reserve. We have all these other types of options. So do we really need 55,000? Is that the real number? And number wise, it's like how many of what type? Because we're going to be able to get some more easily than others. Are we really looking at the right number of the right type? Looking at kind of normal turnover rates that we have. So I start looking at it not just from, okay, well, we've got a problem by our current systems. We need to bring in this many at this point because we're going to have natural turnover. And a lot of it is because we have a large number of mid-grade requirements, larger than the number of junior grades we bring in. So we need to both step up our retention and we need to step up our recruiting.
Oh, wait. So let me repeat that. Let me double down that. So the mid-level requirements are where the gap is, not the first or even executive level.
So we have struggled with this a little bit over the past 10 years. I've been working in this space for 8 years now, and I've got people I've worked with who've been there even longer. And we look at where we have decided to grow our organization. Now we've grown in like core headquarters and security force assistance brigades and things that are just by the nature of how they're composed are very senior. They're looking for senior people. Well, in a single entry point system, to make enough senior people, you have to bring in enough junior people. And if you don't make enough jobs for those junior people, we're not going to have enough senior people. So we end up recruiting more than we have actual jobs for. We have a little bit of a deficit there, and that doesn't help our retention rate. Because again, I look at a lot of these different value propositions that people look for when they're looking for work as universals, not just things for Army, not just things for a particular generation. People want to be valuable contributors to a purpose, to where they work. They want to do something that is of value. And if we don't have means for them to do that, it's going to affect our retention rates.
So let me call on 2 things, and I wonder your perspective on this. So the first is going to be that when we talk about mid, I mean, similar to the loss of trust, like not unique to the U.S. Army in any way, shape, and form. Average tenure is, I mean, come on, no one's staying for more than 2 years. I was speaking yesterday morning to one of the largest food and beverage companies in the world,
Hmm.
and not even headquartered in the U.S. They were looking at their either digital or growth marketing tenure. Guess, I'm actually going to make you go from 0 to 1, meaning years, the timeline. Guess the average tenure. Guess the average tenure. I'll give you a hint. It's below 5.
I was going to say 1 to 3 years.
0.7.
Oh,
zero
wow.
point 0.7. Yes, zero point 0.7. And so, and mind you, this data sample is international and it's European based actually. So
Hmm.
it's probably even less in the US. So zero point 0.7. So it's not just you
Yeah. So
that the
people are coming
mid.
on for a project and then they're leaving.
Exactly. And I would argue, sort of what we talked about is 7 months. Yeah, that's usually 6 months is when you know you are not good at your job or the onboarding is done and you have to show results. And in digital marketing, it's a little easier to show the results than others. But so the second thing I was going to put at you though is this is also very common. At least what I'm hearing is in startups we call it the leaky bucket phenomenon.
Hmm.
You know what I'm talking about here, where listen, all a startup is a massive leaky bucket, and you're trying to plug the holes before you run out of water. And
Yep.
so, in your case, you just keep deluging more water, more water, more water. And this is I mean, you're an engineer by trade, right? So,
Hmm.
what's that saying when like we've broken, we've hit the breaking point now where we've over optimized the process, and I think that's part of what you're talking about. And so, let me stop there. How off am I?
Hmm. No, I was going to say that's exactly the problem. I mean, when I talk about recruiting being a complex problem, it's because even if we fix recruiting, we're not going to necessarily fix the manpower and personnel problems that we have. So we could be bringing in enough people, but we still may be wrestling with being short in those mid to senior grades or not making sure they have the right experience. So this is something that we've been working on for years, looking at talent management, looking at different ways of development, different ways of doing business. We're coming out of 20 years of protracted global conflict. And during that time, we very much narrowed our development of people to focus very much on tactical frameworks and tactical decision making. It doesn't work too well if people can't make the jump from that type of leadership and that type of decision making to enterprise. So then we end up with, one of the things that my boss and my boss's boss have challenged me to think about is like, how do we look at a total risk portfolio where we're looking at a combination of midterm, long term, short term initiatives, high risk, low risk, and, kind of investing in our innovation initiatives the same way we'd invest in our retirement accounts.
Damn. Let me play back. Let me play back this point though of so you mentioned, at least the way I heard it, is that the problem's more in the collaboration. So
Yep.
it's not right. It the indicators come out in recruiting, right? So the indicators come out in churn, tenure, uh, talent shortages. That's where the indicators come out. But
Hmm.
the real source of the problem, the first principle we could say is really the collaboration. So the point of 6 months to 5 years is where things are broken. Now, okay, let me ask you a crazy question.
Good. I like crazy
And
questions.
right, let me ask you a crazy question. Uh, Kris, why the hell not just go use a freelance platform to go hire these people?
So got one of those in the works. Working with, so as you know, Matt, we talked about this at South by, but we're rolling out the Gig Eagle platform so that we have a way of bringing on our talented reservists and guard members for projects anywhere from about 4 hours worth of work to 30 days worth of work. We want to be able to expand that to be able to, kind of source talent from all over the place so that we can bring in people in those projects. We can't do it right now quite the way we want to individually. So we're looking at how we potentially could do 1099 type work. However, we can hire companies that can do that for us. So that's something very much that we've been thinking about, especially as we start looking at digital technology, at everything, data science, AI, um, nanotechnology, just all these different things that people have been interested in. and trying to figure out the use cases for that we're actually starting to build a lot of different projects around. Um, that type of talent, not just in the military, but in private sector is rare. We talked to a lot of large companies who are looking at the amount of technology talent they're going to have going forward. And everybody's like, oh man, we're not going to be able to, we can't buy enough. There's just not enough. This competition is going to kill all of us unless we kind of figure out ways of either growing our own or sharing it. And the freelance side of things, being able to share on different projects, share this talent and keep it gainfully employed is massively beneficial, both for our organization and for the people with this talent.
Can I have you repeat the word sharing again?
Yeah.
Here's why I very selfishly ask. So, we get. Here's where I'm gonna. Hopefully you laugh too. We'll see. This might be a one-sided joke, but so listen. U.S. Army and enterprise company. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
who's taking on more risk? And we hear common objections. It's a lot better now than it was 5 years ago. But if we were to say, hey, do you want to share your talent? That's one of the most common objections is, well, why would I share my talent? This is my talent, right? I don't want them to work anywhere else. And non-competes just became null. They're legal now, or they're not enforceable anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so, listen, you're sharing everyone. It's just the way I would put it. But let's dig into that. I mean, when you say sharing, what do you mean by that? God,
So when we look at what we need to do in order to retain top talent, right? They're going to want a couple things. They're going to want quality of life and quality of work. So, you can talk benefits all day. We can say, we're going to pay this, we're going to give you this salary, we're going to give you this benefit, we're going to give you this method of work. Oh, that's great. But if you don't have those good and valuable projects for them to work on, and if, let's say I'm able to hire that, talented individual, and they spend maybe 25% of their time on the projects that they love doing and 75% on admin crap, just because that's other work that we have to do in the office. Do you think they're going to stay? Not when they have the opportunity to do, 50% time work or even larger. So if I only have 25% of a full-time equivalent that needs to be doing that particular type of work, and they want to do this type of work all the time, they don't want to do other work, why don't I buy 25% of their time and let the other company that has 50 or 75% of the work capable for them to go use them for the rest of the time? Because then not only is that person getting their full value, but they're also keeping their skills sharp. I'm not putting them in refresher training because they only use their skills for me for a certain part of the time. And they're getting a partnership potentially with a company or that'll, might be doing cutting edge work, might be doing the type of stuff that attracts this type of talent. And they end up with some new skills that I can then use.
Yeah,
So
you nailed it. You absolutely nailed it. And so let's get into Geek Eagle if we can.
okay.
Let me ask a really funny question at first, which is why not just there's 800 plus global talent platforms, right? And you can get one for anything. There's one called Laceless Designs just for shoe designers. There's another one called Trees Engineering in Malaysia just for oil and gas engineers. There are so many niche. There's actually a new one that just popped up out of Turkey that is gaming developers, right? Just developers that are there. Yeah. So why not use an existing one? Let's start with that question.
Well, that's always an interesting problem when you talk about the DoD. And a lot of it comes down to identity management and trust. So we want to make sure that people working on our projects are people that we've trusted, that we verified, yada, yada, yada. And, we're learning this a lot as work in the innovation space. It's like we don't have good mechanisms for translating, other standards of security, other standards of data management, other standards in general to how we do business. So for us, the default always seems to be creating our own platform and our own processes. The problem comes in, it's like, well, what happens if we want to open this to other people to use? Well, the idea seems great, except, everybody's going to have to go get a CAT card or their DoD ID number or other things. So it really kind of limits the field. It's the trade-off between having something that the DoD trusts enough to use because it's using their background processes and everything else, and then doing what I think is going to be very hard but necessary work for true public-private partnership and figuring out how to crosswalk different standards of security so that they're common.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, it's why we're seeing a lot of like talent pool technology pop up where it's more of the freelance management more so than the freelance sourcing. And so,
Mm-hmm.
and, I mean, a little dirty secret, by the way, is on most talent platforms, the bring your own feature is one of the fastest growing adoption levers. And so I'm totally not surprised. Now, let me ask you a more high level question, and that is, the US government built the internet. Okay, first explain that and why. I mean, and maybe Al Gore might get mad when I say that, but or maybe he'll say, oh, yeah. So first explain what I mean by that. And then second, why haven't we built the freelance economy? What the hell?
So, I mean, when it comes to leading edge technology, we still have a lot of leading edge research going on. And it has become viable for us when it goes back and forth between DoD development and industry and academia. Because, it's like we'll come up with a concept, a requirement, a prototype, something really cool. Industry will figure out how to make it better, faster, cheaper, however much, and turn around, we'll take it, we'll figure out new use cases, we'll chew on it. And everything that you've seen in terms of a lot of the common technology we use, I mean, we're talking internet, we're talking Bluetooth, we're talking Wi-Fi, we're talking tons and tons
Autonomous
of different
vehicles.
types of technology, 5G, that it goes back and forth. A lot of the things that we're doing with biomedical advancements, back and forth. Um, when we have that type of collaboration where we can kick the ideas back and forth, then really good things come out of it, both for the DoD and for our private partnerships. So why haven't we done other things? Well, a lot of what we develop is predicated by the impending nature of some crisis. So, that kind of drives invention. Hey, we've got something that we absolutely have to figure out. We got to figure it out fast. Let's crash this amazing engine of ingenuity and willpower on this particular thing. All of a sudden, something new is going to come out of it. It's great. It's wonderful. We've all seen how Oppenheimer kind of led up
Yeah.
to that story. When it comes to the people space, we have had, we've been trying to do modernization in the people space for several years. When I say several years, it's probably 10 to 14 years. When I say we as in DoD, General Odierno kicked that off a while ago, but we haven't had that same kind of crisis. So that usually leads to, and I mean, let me back up from that a second and just talk a little bit about kind of our risk culture. So when we're deployed, when we're overseas, you have people of junior grades who are entrusted with a tremendous amount of responsibility and need to get missions done, and they go get it done. They will get it done. They'll get it done away from the flagpole. They'll get it done outside of direct line supervision, and they'll come back and say, hey, we did it. The end. Everything's great. Everything's wonderful. We come back into a garrison environment. For some reason, it's like, okay, no, those rules no longer apply. You will stand in line 15 minutes before formation. You will not walk on the grass. You will make sure everything is shined. And we're sitting there going, these soldiers that I'm yelling at for not being in formation in time are the same people who are leading their own individual missions miles and miles away from where their command and control elements sat. That's just kind of how we interact. So in the people space, we're not in the overseas side of things, even though we are, physically. When we're thinking about the problem, we're still very much in, well, we need this many of this type and they need to do this rank and file. And we're not ready to, kind of blow all the locks and let everything flow freely. We haven't quite, even though we're looking at what we consider a recruiting crisis. I sat down with a whole bunch of folks. We had an all volunteer force forum last week, I think. And that was one of the biggest frustrations. We're like, we got some incredible authorities from Congress to change the way we do business and personnel management. And we've tried a few things, we've piloted a few things, but we really haven't made any substantive transformational change. And the question we asked everybody, we had a whole bunch of senior leaders in the room, we're like, why? It's like, are we really committed to change? Are we committed to looking at how we do business and putting that engine of motivation and ingenuity against it. Until we fully commit to that, then I don't think we're going to be open to really transforming how we do business, except for small pilots and prototypes that we're able to kind of sneak under the wire and then show that they have ROI, and then they kind of get quietly adopted. But it's not that same kind of groundbreaking transformational change that you've seen in those other technologies I mentioned.
That is such a massive, massive insight that I know every platform CEO there is probably going, damn, I feel heard. And what I mean by that, and this might be like the title of the episode, Kris, might be literally stuck in formation.
Yes.
And right. And the reason I said, I mean, you nailed it. So when looking at what moves change, I mean, look at our brains, right? We get, what is it, 8,000 pieces of data is going by our brain. We can only get three bits of data per second to process that. So we only go after what's loudest or what looks like it's going to kill us. But we're really trying to figure out, don't
Yeah.
get killed.
Well, look at Microsoft. Look at what happened with Microsoft. They were about ready. They're a massive technology company, about ready to go under before Satya did all these culture change initiatives.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, what kind of things really drive us to say, you know what? Maybe, and we're kind of talking about the same thing in the recruiting space. We are very good at telling ourselves like, okay, well, we need to do stuff, but our model is good. Our product is good. We don't need to change. Yeah. It's like when we start seeing really needing to do transformational change, we need to get that out of our heads and stop saying our model is good and stop saying, well, what about our model is good? What needs to change?
Is there a way to, or what have you seen in your career? What are some tools and hacks to get ourselves in a place where we can change? And I mean, I ask this because, all right, a war is immediate, right? A crisis is immediate. A world war, okay, yep. There's little change management needed. Everyone on board. Now we're talking about. We'll use the example of Microsoft, right? Or we'll use large companies. Crises don't usually come about, and by the time you recognize them, it's usually too late. And so when you needed to blow the whistle is not when usually people do. So, I mean, do you have any hacks, any tools, any ways? Because from a business perspective, all I understand is P&L. So if I can show you that you're about to go under, okay, sweet. But until then, I need to show you why you need to innovate, why you need to grow, and here's a way to do it. But so, what are some hacks and tools that you've used to really drive change?
So, I mean, the biggest thing we've had success with is where we can measure and show that the massive divergence of experience. And then how do we tie that into a good story? So we recently did a lot of changes to our promotion board process. Previously, you would have all these, senior officers sitting down in a boardroom, manually reviewing files. It was really clunky. Everybody hated doing it. And we started trying to figure out how to get them to let us automate it. So a lot of trust issues, other things. So like, well, we don't want a machine picking people. It's like, so we set it up a little bit so that it wouldn't be a machine picking people. It would be a machine racking and stacking strength of file to get people invitations to our command assessment program. So we looked at, okay, what are the measures in experience that are going to really drive people to realize that this has to get updated? Well, we ended up measuring what people actually looked at and how long they were spending on each file and trying to figure out, what's the story coming out of it. So we're sitting there not really getting much traction with, hey guys, this is inefficient. This is this, you have people manually reviewing these files. They get tired. They have to go to the bathroom. They're going to lose their train of thought. Instead, we went in there and we said to the chief of staff of the Army, like, hey, sir, you got your people, your leadership is being picked right now by somebody looking at their file and spending less than 2 minutes and reading fewer characters than the average tweet. That was oh my God. And we had plenty of data to show. It's like, look, this is exactly what's happening. They're just like, oh, so how do we actually need to pick people? It's like, well, we can automate looking at the strength of file with a machine that doesn't get tired, that doesn't have to go to the bathroom and may need to be occasionally recalibrated, but is going to do a much more accurate review of a manual process and just a manual repetitive process, because that's what machines are good at. And then we're going to take these folks and we're going to dedicate that same kind of 8-week time period that you had people sitting in a boardroom to instead putting them through a battery of assessments that are going to give us a much more rich data set about who we are actually picking, what they're good at, what their psych profile is, everything else that we really want to know about our leaders. So that type of transformation happened just because we were able to say, look, we're going to take this time you were dedicating, we're going to drop it on this instead. And this process that you thought was all this, totally scientific really isn't. And we kind of had to use that to jog their perception. We do similar things where we look at, the transparency piece. We look at why people are leaving the recruiting funnel when they actually want to come join the Army, they put in their paperwork. Why do they drop off? Well, because we're living in a world where you can track your pizza down to, GPS coordinates, and you can't look on an app somewhere and see where your file is and when you're going to get your appointment for your medical exam and everything else. And it's just waiting for someone to call you and tell you it's ready. People don't like that. So you get that divergence of experience. These things don't necessarily create crises, but it shows you a dramatic difference in context that people are going to want to close because they realize the difference of experience could be very damaging to the value proposition.
So, you know what I'm going to call it? I'm going to call it, you just have to have an oh shit moment.
Mm-hmm.
It really,
precisely.
unfortunately, I don't change my car when the light goes on. I change my car when it doesn't turn on anymore. So I don't think I'm the only one that does that. So I wonder, Kris, as we start to get to the end and when we look at Gig Eagle and we look at just in general, getting a freelance workforce, getting the U.S. government, the U.S. Army, DoD to embrace a freelance model and workforce, what have been the biggest surprises that you've had? Both negative, positive, but what have been some of the biggest surprises?
The biggest surprise is that a lot of our leaders are open to it. I mean, they're sitting there looking at this going, wow, I don't have to recruit this person and bring them in and train them and spend all this time investing in them. I can just, hire them temporarily. This is fantastic. Oh, we have all this other talent that's already out there. I use a lot of our reservists part-time for consulting anyway, just because, I've got a whole detachment of reservists who are sitting out in Silicon Valley. In their day jobs, they work for some of the biggest tech industries around, and they want to serve. They come in, and it only costs me the price of bringing them on active duty and sending them TDY for them to come in and take a look at some of the things that we're building and find some massive efficiencies. And they can do that in a 1 day, 2 day, 1 week, 2 week period. And they go back to their day jobs. So trying to find that kind of efficiency other places, you sit there otherwise and you've got 180-day lead time on a consultant, putting a company on contract who's going to take 6 months getting onboarded. And it's just, it's ridiculous. So when you kind of show them the efficiencies we have of bringing people with the type of talent we need in for consultation versus hiring a whole company to do it. And, my industry partners are going to get mad at me for that, but hey, we've got this talent. But again, it's kind of, what we were talking about before. How do I keep them gainfully employed in a way that they're going to have, be value added and find it a valuable experience for them, and then send them off where they're going to get more value? I can't do it if I bring them in and say, you have to join the Army full time. I can do it if I can say, you know what? You're having fun doing this full time in your day job. Give me 2 weeks. 2 weeks to help crash on this project and get us turned in a different direction.
I love the quote, I can't do it if they need to join full time. They only need 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is perfect. Now, what have been the biggest obstacles though?
Oh, goodness.
You got three.
Where do I start?
You got 3 bullet points, right? Where do I hold my beer? It's Friday.
So, the biggest obstacle, bar none, is the number of people who are, functionally fixed on this idea of what fair is. And it's a seniority-based fairness. It's like, well, why are you bringing this person in and putting them in charge of this? The next so-and-so is waiting in line to be the next, leader of blah, blah, blah. Okay, they're waiting in line. Are they the most talented person? And then you ask questions like that, and people just kind of, they start digging in their heels. But it's like, oh no, it's so-and-so's turn. Like, it's not Dungeons and Dragons. I'm not waiting for the dice roll. It's like, I want to find the person who can do the job best.
Which is crazy because and listen, I got a lot of friends that serve, right? And so this is not my first time being surprised by it, but you would assume that something like an Army would be the most meritocratic organization, function, you name it, because you'd think it would have to be. But to your point, in a time of crisis, it damn sure is, but in not get in line. So I'm totally not surprised to hear that.
So I've taken, kind of we have a brevet authority that was given us in the NDA. That means I can take somebody and promote them out of cycle, which, this is what you do in industry. If you take the best person, it doesn't matter how long they've been waiting in line, you promote them. So I've done that with 3 individuals, 2 of which we've taken from the rank of major, skipped over lieutenant colonel completely and promoted him to colonel, just because of the nature of the job and the nature of their qualifications. Oh my goodness, you would have thought I had gone out and, just committed murder, rank heresy, just, burn her at the stake. How dare you? Yeah. And there were people who called me. It's like, why aren't you angry about this? These people now have the same rank you do. I was like, yeah, they're actually better at doing what they're doing than I would be. So why is this an issue? So I think that's another issue too. It's like there's a lot of us who come up through the Army, and so much is tied to our rank and our position. It's like so much personal value gets tied to that it becomes really hard to separate out your value from it. That's one of the things that I've actually found has come very naturally, because I think I spend so relatively little time wearing my uniform. It's you've got to be able to separate that value. It's like the Army values you. They've put responsibility and trust in you. Okay, we got it. But it's not the be all and end all. They're going to promote other people. There are going to be people who are coming up the line who are really good, who actually deserve to jump the line. Shocking.
Yeah. That's awesome. I'm not surprised. I will say it actually isn't as bad in most organizations that I've worked with. But this is what I was going to tell you. The concept of, your work is your identity. There's so much writing about it not being a good thing, but to be honest with you, and maybe it's just the American in me speaking, I don't think it's the worst thing. I only think it's bad if you're in the wrong organization, or in our case, the wrong work contract, because if you are freelancing, you love what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think it's the worst, but I wonder, Kris, I want to give you the stage for 2 minutes, and I literally want you to talk about whatever you want. And I'll give you a little context. The people listening are all over the world, so this is a fully international audience listening to this. But I don't want to frame you in any way. I just literally want to give you 2 minutes, and you could talk about whatever you want. You can talk about your favorite restaurants, which I won't tell the audience where you live, but your favorite restaurants there. Or you can give a message. I just want to give you the stage, Kris. You tell us whatever in the world you want to give us. And it's Friday at almost 3 p.m. So listeners, thank Kris for coming on this late.
Hey, she's had coffee. Everything's good. No, I think we kind of segued into it talking about, looking at the different types of work and our identity. Because I think identity is hugely important. You want to be able to identify in part with your work, but you also want room for everything else you are. We talk a lot about work-life balance, and I think talent management is a lot of that, in figuring out not necessarily balance, but value alignment. It's like, what are the type of things you value? How do you do the work that you value? How do you make time for the family that you value? How do all of these things come into alignment? So that's kind of what we want to get to with everything we've talked about with future of work, with talent management. And I think that's universal for everybody who's trying to find valuable work, or who's trying to find people who align to the value that your company and your organization provides. Just kind of building out that large creative team, that valuable bench of talent to be able to put against some of your biggest problem sets, really kind of comes down to understanding not just how many of what type of people you have, but who they are, what they want, what they value, how they work best, what motivates them, and creating an environment where they can pursue that, and they're incentivized to pursue that.
I love it. Listen, most important, it's definitely a Friday, Kris. Most important question of the podcast is, where can our listeners find you and all the great work you're doing?
So you're probably going to find me most frequently on LinkedIn. I try to push out as much, kind of trying to be as transparent as possible. about the type of work we're doing, about opportunities to join us in that work. So yeah, you can definitely find me hanging out there. You can find me hanging out in podcasts like this. You can find me going to making the speaker circuit. And if you really want to dig deep into what I think about talent management, I actually do have a book coming out this August called Data-Driven Talent Management. So that really is kind of the USB plug plugged into my brain and downloaded into a book after 8 years of trying to drive change in this space for the U.S. Army.
I know that you're like a data engineering technical person, but the USB of my own brain, whatever marketing, pull that, make sure that is quoted right there. So everyone make sure that was the most genius, technical, yet like so simple and sophisticated answer I've ever heard for why buy my book. So, all right, mid-August, everyone put the pin in, go buy that book ASAP. Kris, thank you so much for hopping on.
No, happy to. This is awesome.